If you don't mind putting your name and your location or where you want to do Catch the King mapping into the chat, that would be awesome. Thank you to everyone who's hopping in today. You are here because you are interested in being a Tide Captain with Catch the King. My name's Gabby Kinney. I'm the Community Engagement Project Manager at Wetlands Watch. You may be familiar with me, you may not. And thank you so much to our returning Tide Captains and folks who have mapped with us before, who I'm seeing pop up in the chat. Super excited to have you here today. I continue to be quite unlucky with these kinds of presentations because I am currently recovering from COVID, and I think this is maybe the third time I've done a Catch the King webinar where I've had a little bit of stuffiness. I'm also kind of struggling with a little bit of that shortness of breath that comes with COVID. So if you hear me take a little bit of a pause or a drink of my coffee, excuse me, just know that I am recovering. I'm doing okay. I'm feeling better than I have earlier in the week, but still hanging on to that COVID sickness. So hoping no one else is going through the same. All righty. Well, thank you again for joining the Tide Captain Interest webinar. We're going to dive straight into it. And if you didn't hear at the top of the call, I think I'm still screen sharing, right? I should be. Okay, cool. If you didn't hear at the top of the call, we are going to record this meeting for anyone who didn't get to join us, and also so that we can check out your Q&A a little bit later, and we'll post this on our website as a resource for volunteers. So our agenda for today, we're going to run through a few introductions of some of the core Catch the King planning team, as well as our guest speakers for today. So we'll do a little bit of that after this slide. We're going to do a little bit of an orientation to Catch the King. I do want to add a little bit of a note at the beginning of the call for anyone who is a new or interested Tide Captain. Just know that you'll get kind of an abbreviated version of the Catch the King download because we really want to focus on the roles and responsibilities of a Tide Captain. But if you kind of go through this presentation and you realize the Tide Captain role is not quite for you, that is perfectly fine. We're going to have plenty of opportunities for training and kind of general interest volunteer webinars and in-person training events in the future. So just know that even if this presentation doesn't seem quite like your fit, there's going to be lots of other opportunities for you, and we can really make your Tide Captain role really fun and fit what you are interested in for Catch the King. So we'll do a little bit of a Catch the King orientation. My apologies to returning Tide Captains who have heard a lot of this information before. Thank you for your patience and always willingness to hear more about it. We're going to go through some Tide Captain resources and expectations. So what it takes to be a Tide Captain. This is a very flexible position, volunteer. We have different Tide Captains in different regions, some that have groups, some that don't, and just manage some of the volunteers, and some that are just really good at outreach and communication and help us spread the good word about Catch the King. So lots of different ways to get involved. Then we're going to turn it over to our guest speakers at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. We have Emma Corbett and Ben McFarlane on the call today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a really fun and interesting kind of ongoing monitoring opportunity for any Tide Captain that's interested in data collection beyond just Catch the King. And this is going to be a really interesting pilot program helping the PDC steward some of their flood sensor network. So we'll get to hear about that. Once we hear about Adopt a Sensor, we're going to go into the 2024 Catch the King schedule. So I'll talk a little bit about the upcoming training events, upcoming webinars, and we'll talk about some of the official dates that we have on the calendar for King Tide events. Then we'll open it up towards the end for Tide Captain feedback and Q&A. So would love to hear from anyone and everyone, past and new, how they're feeling about Catch the King this year, and anything that I've missed in the presentation that you are interested in. Happy to take any and all questions. So let's move right into Meet the Team intros. So I already introduced myself. As the Community Engagement Project Manager at Wetlands Watch, I run and coordinate Catch the King across Virginia. And we've also last year gotten funding from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, to expand the Catch the King program into North Carolina. So we have one pilot in a new state under our belt. NOAA is interested in expanding us further and exploring the use of the Sea Level Rise app to collect flood data in riverine and precipitation flooding areas. So that's something that we're exploring. Nothing is finalized yet, but just know that we've got some national interest in Catch the King and our Sea Level Rise app, which has been awesome. I'm going to toss it over just to our new Catch the King assistant for this year. Some of you may recognize her name, Josie Shostak. She joined us just a couple of weeks ago, I guess maybe a little more than a month now. And she's been doing an absolute incredible job on outreach. So I'll just toss it over to her for a brief second to introduce herself.
Well, hi there, everyone. I'm sure you've seen my name at the end of a newsletter or the end of an email, but nice to officially meet you all and excited to be working with you this upcoming season.
Thanks, Josie. We also have a couple of folks, or I think we only have Derek from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. So Dr. Derek Loftus is our Catch the King data researcher, data modeler, and scientist who works on the Tide Watch model that we'll talk about a little bit later. So I want to toss it over to him to give a quick intro of himself.
Hi, I'm Derek Loftus. A lot of my work that I do as a research professor at VIMS, or the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, is mostly focused on helping develop different types of hydrodynamic models and using data like the community science information that's collected through the Sea Level Rise app developed by Wetlands Watch to help us validate those types of models. Not just during major hurricanes, but of course our very public tidal calibration of the model, which is kind of manifest in the form of Catch the King each year when we try to ask a large group of people to help map the highest astronomical tide of the year. And your data, help validate not just these physics-based models like the hydrodynamic models that I develop, but also your data, by themselves become their own data-driven model. We now have over a decade's worth of data from the Sea Level Rise app since its early alpha days in 2014, back when we started mapping with Hurricane Arthur and the Hague of Norfolk, all the way up until now. And so it's been really exciting to see over 250,000 GPS high water marks that have been reported of different types of storm events, high tide events, and other different types of flooding events that help us extrapolate those data forward to tell us what sea level might look like in 2050 or 2070 or 2100.
Thank you, Derek. Don't worry, there will be plenty of time to ask Derek your data questions a little later on.
Oops.
The other person from VIMS who unfortunately can't join us today is Karen During, but I wanted to intro her here because there may be some folks on the call who were connected through her, or you may know of Catch the King through her. She's the VIMS. We consider her our community science advisor for Catch the King, but she is also a marine research individual over there. So thank you, Karen, and we'll look forward to everyone getting to know you a little later on. From the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, who again are our guest speakers today, we've got Emma Corbett, who is the resilience planner. So I'll toss it over to her to give a quick intro of herself.
Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emma Corbett. I am the resilience planner at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. So I work with Ben McFarland, who's also on our call, and the rest of the folks in our water resources department on issues related to flooding and sea level rise in the region. And I'm really excited to talk to you all today about our flooding sensor network.
Thank you, Emma. Ben, do you want to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Ben McFarland, I'm the Chief Resilience Officer for the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. I think I see a number of familiar names here in the meeting, so it's good to see you all again. But really excited about the potential partnership that we have here. We're going to be talking about later today, working with Wetlands Watch on our effort with assessing roadway flooding here in Hampton Roads. So again, really excited about seeing where we can take this.
Thank you, Ben. Excited to have you guys here today. I do want to do a very quick round robin of our tide captains and folks who have joined us. I know you've done a great job of putting your name and location in the chat, but I'd like to welcome our returning tide captains. I see a lot of folks who have mapped with us before on the call. So I wouldn't mind starting with a few of them. I can popcorn, or maybe I'll pick someone and then you popcorn to the next if you're familiar with someone on the call. But I think I maybe want to start with Joe Bouchard since you've got your camera on. Do you mind just give us your name, where you're mapping? And I liked Karen's, we did this during a tide captain training last year, your favorite shoreline, and it doesn't have to be where you map.
Hi, everyone. Joe Bouchard, the tide captain for Virginia Beach. I've been the tide captain since 2018. So I've been doing this for a while. Let's see. My favorite place to map is Hawley Road at the entrance to Beach Garden Park because it floods during the king tide. So I get to map some honest to goodness flooding closing a road. And that's it. I'll turn it over to Derek. Not Derek. Hang on. David. David
Hey,
Pezza.
hey, Joe. Thanks. My name's Dave Petza. I am a member of the Wetlands Watch Board of Directors. The sponsors works with this group. I applaud Gabby for the work she's doing and welcome Josie to the team. I work in West Norfolk. There's multiple areas that flood, um, and I visit as many as them I can to check up on the mappers and do some mapping. So that's about it. And I've been here as long as Joe. I can't really remember Joe when I started, but it's about the same time as you. That's it.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much. Very excited to have Josie on board too, and we'll get you some in-person intros sometime soon. Get a board intro to Josie. Carol, I don't know if you can come off mute, but I would love for you to do an intro if you don't mind. Carol Leibstein.
Hi. Let me see. I started with Catch the King when it started, working with Karen Jaklich, training lots of people. I usually map in Norfolk in the Ward's Corner area. I missed last year. I was out of town and looking forward to resuming this year.
Thanks, Carol. Bill Blair, do you want to go?
Sure, I'd be glad to do it. I've been with this, I think the second year that it started. Karen and Derek worked with them at VIMS and the training in Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula. I really like mapping around the point at Gloucester Point and the back shorelines. My favorite coastline, though, is really up on the Rappahannock. I really enjoy going up there and doing that. But that's me.
Thank you, Bill. Adrian, do you want to go? I know we talked about Tide Captain roles last year, so I would love to have you chip in this year.
Okay, so last year was my first year as Tide Captain, my second year mapping the flood or the shoreline. Kind of fun. Some unexpected results there, but all is good. And I'm looking forward to doing Lancaster County again. It's just really interesting. Had a couple volunteers at Belle Isle, and they were really energetic and wanted, love to have more help there because we just couldn't do all the areas that they had. And just hoping that, to achieve some really good goals and get more information and data this year.
It's great to set the tone, Adrian. Thank you. We all hope the same. And I am really excited about the new potentially interested Tide captains this year and getting some more support out on the Northern Neck and the Middle Peninsula. So thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
looking through, I think I got all of the returning Tide captain. Oh, John Powell. I haven't done you yet.
Oh, okay. I map Gloucester Point Beach and around them's shoreline. I've done it for about maybe 4 years.
Thanks, John. Perfect. Okay, if I missed anyone, I am sincerely sorry, but anyone else who's mapped Catch the King before, even if you weren't a Tide captain, please feel free to jump in next. Otherwise, I'm going to start popcorning. No takers? All right, I'm going to go in the order I've got them on my screen. So Bryce Johnson, if you don't mind coming off mute and doing a quick little intro.
Hey, I'm actually a graduate from Virginia Wesleyan University, so I'm coming back for my master's and I'd like to continue to help out in the community. And flooding is definitely a current issue. I see it in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So yeah, I'd like to come in and help out wherever I can.
Thank you, Bryce. That's awesome. Let's do Jill Reddick. You are next on my screen, if you don't mind coming off mute.
Hi, my name is Jill. I am in Northern Virginia, and I heard about this through the Master Naturalist. I worked at NOAA for 6 years. I was a data analyst doing tides and currents. So this is bringing it back, possibly.
Sounds like right up your alley. We're excited to get to know you. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
And I have Ross, just Ross on my screen next with a beautiful photo of a rainbow in your picture.
Hey, this is Ross. I mapped as a helper with Adrian last year, and I am now a master naturalist and very much interested in all this kind of stuff. And I know Adrian and I sure could have used help last year in Lancaster County, so I thought maybe with two captains we could split the work and get it done.
That's the way we do it. I love it. We'll definitely work on getting y'all some more support up there this year. I've got Joseph Barnes up next. I know I recognize your name, so forgive me, but go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am a project coordinator at Old Dominion University, working on Catch the King and some other water quality monitoring events during that time. So looking forward to running that event in Norfolk.
Thanks, Joe. And so sorry, I saw Joe yesterday and just couldn't put a name to a face. So that's my bad. Yeah, Joe is running a cool project at ODU that we might partner with this year and get some cool exposure on. So thanks, Joe, for joining us, and sorry for that. Up next, I have Rob on my screen. Just Rob.
Yes, hi, Gabby. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, I'm very excited. We're about to start a new field trip program for Isle of Wight County and Newport News City school kids at Ragged Island Marsh over on the James River. So that would be my new favorite place on the bay. And I've known Derek since he was actually a student in our program at Christopher Newport, and excited to work with him on this. And also there are, I think, 3 graduate students on the call who might reference our program, but I really appreciate you doing this for us. Looking forward to participating.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to have you join us and looking forward to working with the students. It sounds great.
Awesome.
I have Claire Wilmore next on my screen.
Hello, my name is Claire. I work for Friends of the Rappahannock as an environmental educator, and my coworker and I are planning to go into the schools and show kids how to use that so they can help map the king time.
Thanks, Claire. I can I'll toss it over to Robin next since that seems fitting.
Hi, this is Robin Didlake, and I'm the Environmental Education Manager for Friends of the Rappahannock. And Claire said perfectly what we plan on doing, getting into the schools and getting students involved in this amazing citizen science project.
Thanks, Robin. I have Jaden Brass next.
Hi, my name is Jaden. I'm one of the graduate students from CNU. I've never mapped before, but I'm really interested in getting involved in learning and helping the kids get involved.
Sweet. Thanks, Jaden. Andrea Case, got you next.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea, and this is my first year thinking about being a tide captain.
Thanks, Andrea. Kristen Pullman.
Hello, my name is Kristen. I'm in Virginia Beach and I work with Lynnhaven River now as our community outreach coordinator. So we are excited to be partnering with Wetlands Watch this year and coordinating being a tide captain for the first time.
Thanks, Kristen. And LR Now has mapped before, I think, but we are really excited to support some training and get y'all. And I know you've worked with Joe before, I believe, too. So it's really exciting for me to get to know what y'all been up to and see how we can help in that area. Emily Willis, I have you up next.
Hi, I'm Emily. Kristen's my colleague at LR Now. I'm the communications coordinator. So yeah, we're excited to be captains this year. I did the mapping last year on my own with a group from ODU. So excited to do it again.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Fernando, I have you. Your name is also familiar, so it's good to have you on the call too. Please feel free to intro yourself.
Hi, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Fernando Galeana Rodriguez. I am faculty at William and Mary, and I teach an environmental justice class. So I am very interested in exploring the opportunity of also in supporting this endeavor with my students. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Russo, I have you last, but certainly not least.
I'm John Russo. I'm also one of Rob's graduate students at Christopher Newport, and I've never met before, so I'm excited to learn about it.
Sweet. Thank you, everybody. I know those intros can sometimes take some time, but it's really awesome for us to get to know y'all face to face. And I always have more work to do on putting names to faces. So just really thank you for joining the call. Let's get into it. So I'm going to play a little bit of a video. This is about a minute and a half long, and this just gives a really nice overview of what Catch the King is. This video was developed in partnership with WHRO Public Media, who helped us found and really start Catch the King way back when. And again, apologies for the Tide captains who have seen this video already, but I just love this video so much, so I can't resist not sharing it. Please let me know also if you guys can't hear the audio.
We are missing audio on this one. It might be because I'm recording, because sometimes they have like recording rules about that kind of thing with YouTube. So if you'd like me to stop recording or at least pause it, I'm going to pause it and see if that fixes it.
Generated, so you might have seen errors and typos in there. I think they're auto-generated from YouTube, so I know there's a couple words in there that were off. I also wanted to highlight that this, you saw a couple of folks taking water samples right around here, and we won't go into too much depth into it on this call, but in future kind of Catch the King, more general interest training webinars and training events, we talk a lot about our partner programs, and one of which is a program run through Old Dominion University called Measure the Muck. And the goal of this program, which is run by Dr. Margaret Mulholland at ODU, as well as some of her graduate students, is they, during king tides, go out and actually sample the floodwaters that are appearing on the streets, and they take it to the lab and analyze it for nutrient load. And some of their results are actually really, really jarring. And we go into a deep dive each year during our volunteer appreciation event, which we usually hold around January and February. So really awesome kind of cotangent program that runs alongside the King Tides and Catch the King, and there will be opportunities to get engaged with them a little bit later on, which is awesome. If you're new to Catch the King, again, always caveating that many folks on the call have heard this. The Sea Level Rise app was launched in around 2014 to 2015 after Hurricane Sandy with our prior executive director, Skip Stiles. So some of you on the call may be familiar with that name. And at the time, this app was launched because there was seemingly this really large outreach push from folks on things like Facebook and developing Facebook groups and finding these ways to communicate with people in neighborhoods when something like a hurricane occurs, and getting people resources and safety, and really just having people feel like a sense of community emerges from these kinds of events. So at the time, Skip Stiles and Dave Mayfield, who was a reporter with the Virginia Pilot at the time, as well as folks from WHRO, came up with this awesome idea to hold Catch the King and develop an app to collect that sunny day and king tide flooding. The biggest Catch the King event that we've held so far was in 2017, and we actually broke a Guinness World Record for this work, much to our surprise. And this was, I believe, the name of the award was Most Contributions to an Environmental Survey. So we got almost 60,000 pins that year and over 700 volunteers. Really, really robust and awesome effort. COVID came in and unfortunately deflated that effort a little bit. And ever since I've been on board at Wetlands Watch since 2022, we've been trying to rebuild the network and really grow it in a really meaningful way. And maybe we'll break another record one day. All of the mapping we collect with our Sea Level Rise app, which we're going to do a little bit of a spotlight on in a slide or two. All of the mapping contributes to flood modeling and sea level rise prediction research, as Derek kind of foreshadowed to earlier. We work with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science to share the data we collect and actually validate those flood prediction models that are being developed at VIMS. One of my favorite aspects of this program is that it's really a public awareness and safety and climate solution project. Citizen science is a really, really fun way to get people engaged in climate issues. And you may hear me kind of flip-flop citizen science and community science. And these sorts of events are not only a way for us to collect really critical research and data on how climate is impacting our local communities today, but it also lends, again, to that future planning work and predictive work. And it's just a fun event. Really, anyone can participate. We organize teams and data collection all over coastal Virginia. And as I mentioned earlier, we're now in North Carolina with funding from NOAA. And the way that this all functions is through a tide captain and volunteer group system, although anyone and everyone can volunteer and participate and catch the king. You don't have to be assigned a tide captain. You don't have to be assigned a region. Anyone who can come to a training event and pick up how to use the Sea Level Rise app is welcome to go out and map during king tides. And we monitor that data on an ongoing basis. But we do our best over these next couple of months, usually starting around July through the end of October, to really amplify some efforts, get people coordinated and ready to collect some flood data. So from a kind of visual standpoint, these are all of our friendly folks. I just love this array of photos so much. Some of the folks who are in these photos are on the call today. And so this is kind of showing the diversity of groups that we get mapping. And so this is Dr. Margaret Mulholland running that Measure the Muck program over here. We've got some Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula master naturalists, master gardeners. This is also Measure the Muck here. This was our youngest mapper here. You can't really see it, but this is actually a woman who lives in Norfolk, and this is her newborn baby on her chest, helping her map right outside her house. And then we've got the Girl Scouts over here in the bottom left corner. And so just a really kind of awesome way to say that community science is science for everyone. And whether you're just a resident who's experiencing flood issues or you're part of a more organized volunteer group, there's really always a place for you in Catch the King. So further kind of going into the issue of king tides. So if you're unfamiliar with what king tides are, I'm no strong expert on astronomical processes, but I do know that it's due to the orbit of the moon, which we know at this point is not a circle, it is an ellipses. And when the moon is in its orbit and it's closest to Earth, the gravitational pull of the moon is what causes those astronomical high tides. So as the orbit goes around, in those moments where it's closest to Earth, the water is being brought up higher in certain areas and lower on other areas. So you'll get astronomical high and astronomical low tides. The reason why we study king tides is because of a grand old thing called climate change and sea level rise. Over time, king tides are growing larger and larger, as well as the normal tide cycle. So we're seeing more water enter our streets during these kind of normal, in the East Coast, we experience diurnal tides. And so we get 2 tides a day, 2 high tide, 2 low. And we're seeing those water levels increase because of climate change. And so why we study king tides is that those astronomical events, those really big high water events that we're seeing and the ones that we collect data on for Catch the King could be our normal minor flood events of the future, or what we call our just typical sunny day flooding events. So when you step outside your house, if you live in a really high flood prone area like the lower Hampton Roads area, and you're out and about getting in your car and you see there's water up the street, but there's not a cloud in the sky, this is the kind of flooding that we're talking about. And that kind of flooding is only getting worse with sea level rise and climate change. And so as we study what those king tides look like today and what that might mean for our normal tidal cycle of the future, all of the Catch the King data we collect can be a really awesome way to kind of get a visual of what that looks like. To piggyback off of planning for this kind of thing, you might say, how do we predict king tides or how do we plan for them? There's a whole lot of data science that goes into looking at, and NOAA's tides and currents charts are one of the most incredible resources out there. So I want to spotlight them, and we can look at these tide charts, these predictive tide charts ahead of time, and pick some of the really high astronomical dates that align with full moons, super moons, and the king tide cycle. So we look ahead of time, usually sometime early in the year, at those predictive charts that are put out by NOAA, as well as a couple of other sources like the tidal stations set up around Hampton Roads in coastal Virginia. And Dr. Loftus at VIMS puts together this awesome 2024 Virginia tidal flooding calendar. He does this each year so that ahead of time we can look at the calendar and say, okay, we know the king tides are coming up, and we've got one really kind of high event in September and one high event in October. This is about the range that we see our highest Catch the King tide event is in this September to November range, because they're amplified in the fall. So we look at that ahead of time. This calendar is an open resource for everyone, and we publicize this on our website through our newsletter. This can really help you. This can help you plan your own activities. Some local governments will use a resource like this to help with tourist season and hurricane season as it comes in, just to alert people who might not be familiar with the way things work on the coast, especially in the face of sea level rise and climate change, that you might not want to plan your vacation on that weekend in September because you might have a little bit of trouble getting around. So this kind of resource can be extremely important and is something that we would encourage you to share or to print or to bookmark somewhere so that you can keep an eye on when those king tide events are happening. Flooding in Hampton Roads specifically is pretty visual and something that gets a lot of attention from the state. It is actually something that we're trying to improve outreach and expansion on for flood resilience, not just in these coastal areas, but also inland. So just know all of this kind of king tide and coastal work that we're doing is also caveated with the acknowledgement that flooding is a rising issue in non-coastal areas as well. But just to show some of those really kind of stark images that we see, this is in Norfolk, which is what we call really kind of ground zero for sea level rise and flooding. We're not just dealing with floodwaters kind of coming up to people's doorsteps and barring them from leaving. It's also affecting things like transportation, how kids get to school, can they go stand at their bus stop? Can emergency vehicles get to these homes? And so all of these communities that have been built kind of right on the edge are starting to see really sparse effects or really drastic effects of sea level rise and king tide flooding. We're also, like I mentioned earlier, with kind of tangent programs like Measure the Muck, concerned with what these floodwaters coming into the streets are carrying out with them. So when you see visuals like this of this kind of sunny day, and I put an arrow here to show this is complete blue skies with some king tide flooding, and oops, here we go. We are also concerned with what is carried back out from the floodwaters. So again, Measure the Muck is a program that comes in and will look at sites like this where trash, debris, runoff, nutrient loads, all of those kinds of things are really high impact. And they'll take water quality samples from these areas, but also just it's very visual and very physical to see things like trash cans tipped over into the floodwaters. And trash bags and just even floating pollution that gets carried back out into the coast. And of course, what do those floodwaters trudge through before they make it back to the coast? And it's all of our wetlands and coastal ecosystems. So this is really a multifaceted program that aims at looking at not just the floodwater itself, but how people and things and urban development, urban areas, sediment, erosion, all of that is interacting with the floodwaters as well. It also looks like this in more urban environments. Of course, we've got stormwater systems and storm drains that back up because of those floodwaters, parking lots that are rendered just unusable because of the elevation and their proximity to some of these high-risk areas. So we're seeing a lot of impacts, especially in urban areas, in terms of the infrastructure that's at risk with all this flooding. The Sea Level Rise app itself. So to give our tool a little bit of a highlight, this is what the app looks like on its tools pin or tools tab. And we'll, like I said, we're going to kind of breeze through some of the more nitty gritty details of how to collect data so we can get to the tide captain roles and responsibilities. But fret not, we're going to have lots of resources that teach you how to use the app as well as training events. So like we mentioned earlier, every single one of these data points that's dropped, and how we do it is invite volunteers to go out and drop GPS coordinate pins along the outer edges of the floodwaters that they find in their community. This can look like anything from a beachfront shoreline to, like on the previous slide, an area where a storm drain has backed up, and you might see flooding just pop up in the middle of a street. We drop those GPS pins, and every single one of those is correlated to a specific GPS point. So our app collects all of this data, And we organize this in the app using regions and events. So we have everyone organized into specific areas so that when we go and look at the data later, we're able to pull up a data sheet that comes specifically from Norfolk and specifically from Lancaster County and specifically from Gloucester and those kinds of things. So we have a really awesome kind of organization system on the back end. All of this data is what goes into the VIMS Tidewatch model, and this is a really awesome composite map that Derek has developed for us. This shows all of the data from 2017 to 2023, pending 2024, of course. And if you're curious about where all of the data has been over the last several years, this is an awesome resource to explore. One of the coolest things that I like to show about this map is the comparison of 2017 to 2023. So this was our first year collecting data. You can see a lot of focus on the Hampton Roads area, lower and coastal, and then we've got some awesome pins here on the Middle Peninsula. But then we add in the 2023 pins, and I am just so giddy to see so many more pins trickling their way further north. And I know we have someone from Northern Virginia on the call, and of course, we have so much potential to do some mapping up in that area as well. So just know over the years, the outreach efforts have been awesome. We are slowly growing more and more, especially in the more rural areas, and trying to find those really high-risk areas as well as the Eastern Shore. So if you're ever curious about this, I'm planning on sending out a copy of these slides, and this map is hyperlinked on this image. So if you click on it, you're able to access the composite map. And Josie has put in some awesome photos on this slide just to show what some of that data collection looks like in different areas. So these are all images collected by our Catch the King volunteers. So why we need you, the importance of this call and our Tide Captain roles. So Tide Captains often serve as a number of things, and they wear different hats in the Catch the King world. And again, we are very flexible on how the Tide Captain role is formed. Everyone has a different stake in the climate change and sea level rise game. Everyone has a different kind of set of resources behind them, whether it's a classroom, a university, a group of master naturalists, anything like that, we can find a place for you. Volunteer coordination is, of course, a huge part of this role. So if you're someone who has volunteers ready to go or has experience doing volunteer coordination, one of the things that we can do is kind of do a train the trainer where you know how to use the Sea Level Rise app and do a Catch the King mapping, and you can then disseminate that information into your group. And we can also give you a list of volunteers that are in or around your area once we get some registration rolling a little bit later on, so you can engage with those folks as well. Information radiator, this is like one of my favorite phrases that I've learned as I've become a professional. Your role could also be to just share information. If you have a lot of connections, newsletters, or you know folks who might be able to get the word out about Catch the King, we are extremely supportive of that and are always creating flyers, social media information, graphics, anything that you might need to help spread the word. That is something we are more than happy to work with you on. Day of point of contact. This is something that we're trying to really hone in this year, where during Catch the King weekend, there are, of course, a lot of volunteers who go out and collect data on their own, no problem. But there are some folks who just really want someone to meet up with on the day of Catch the King and get shown the ropes. There might be some new volunteers who aren't quite ready to actually collect data themselves, but really want to kind of jump in on the effort and see what it looks like. And so you serving as kind of a point of contact for them and showing them around and taking them to a flood site is something that we offer as part of this. Assisting at training events and developing materials. This is really important because training events and developing any of our kind of tutorial guides, videos, those kinds of things, all of those are informed by feedback from our Tide Captains and our volunteers, but I really lean on our Tide Captains to help share what their volunteers are going through. We've had a lot of kind of app development reiterations over the years, trying to tweak it, fix its bugs, that have been just immensely helpful from the feedback from Tide Captains. And so we continue to really encourage new and returning Tide Captains to look at the program, let us know what's not working, what is working, and we just want this to be a really iterative process with y'all in mind. help connecting us to the community values and local government efforts. So this year, again, we're going to do a little bit of a spotlight on a partnership with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, but any other connection to your own community and things that are happening in your area. One of the really awesome connections we've made in North Carolina is with a local group that does regular beach cleanups. And so combining that king tide data collection on the beach, and at the same time, they go down the beach, they'll collect trash on the way down, and then they'll collect sea level rise up pins on the way back up. There's a lot of ways to link this to what the community finds important, and what can otherwise help the community do in the face of climate change. Growing our geographic reach, like I showed on the last slide with the composite map, we grow this network through y'all. And so being able to connect with more people, more organizations, and people with volunteer groups is really just awesome to us. And thank you just so much to everyone in the past who has helped us get connected with volunteer groups and civic groups and things like that have really helped us grow our geographic reach. And then there is always the added benefit that as you are learning and collecting data about king tides, that you then get to be a little bit of an expert yourself on how sea level rise and flooding is impacting your neighborhoods. Not any one community experiences this issue the same. It looks very different in Hampton Roads and in urban areas as it does in the Northern Neck, Eastern Shore, up in Northern Virginia. And so as we are doing this together, we are also learning a lot from you on how this flood risk landscape works in different areas that isn't just focused on our area of expertise. So it's just a great community sharing opportunity, and we get to learn a lot about how flood risk and sea level rise is impacting everyone across Virginia. I'm going to be a little bit, I like graphics, so that's how I'm going to caveat this. I wanted to show a little bit of the hierarchy that we build into the Sea Level Rise app. It's not as complicated as it looks, but just know that with the Sea Level Rise app, we can actually assign levels of engagement with the app. And we do this because there is always a need to do some quality control on the data that comes in, but specifically for our tide captains, allows us to give tide captains more opportunities to do things with the Sea Level Rise app. There are assigned roles for new recruits. They can collect data, but we can actually assign them a level that doesn't have their data show up on the official maps on the Sea Rising Solutions portal. It's still collected. And in some cases, some folks might want to be in this area because they're mapping on a private property and they don't want others to know that there's flood risk on their property, which is a very real thing. So some folks might want to be in this category. Usually with returning participants or folks who we know have been through training, we allow them to both collect data and view and export the data that they collect. Every region and event gets their own kind of data spreadsheet with all of that GPS coordinate stuff I showed earlier. And so we can organize it in that way as well. Tide captains in particular, y'all are awesome and get to have access not only to collecting data, viewing and exporting it, but you are allowed and given permission to create and manage events inside the Sea Level Rise app. And we do this because once our tide captains are kind of oriented to the program and have done mapping with us or feel really confident in the Sea Level Rise app, they can go ahead and create mapping events that aren't just related to Catch the King. And this has always been a goal, that Catch the King is awesome and important, and we love that we can all kind of rally everyone together during this one weekend. But king tide flooding and sunny day flooding happens way more frequently than just that one weekend in October. And so we give tide captains kind of the opportunity to create events on their own if they're with an organization who has other flood-related priorities or are already doing some kind of monitoring out in the field and want to set up their own monitoring kind of process with the Sea Level Rise app. That is something that we offer. And so we've kind of created this tiered status, although it is very fluid and we're not super strict with it other than just making sure that tide captains have this advanced permission to do more with the app, which is awesome. And then of course we have this bubble out here, which is our end users. And we, again, like I said earlier, one of the roles of the tide captains is figuring out how this data is relevant for your community. So if there's something going on, a town hall meeting, a new development, things like that, that you think that this data would be useful for, that's always something we're looking for. And we definitely lean on our network of tide captains and volunteers to help us leverage the data in that way. think I went through a lot of this, just to show a little bit of a visual on what that looks like from a Tide Captain perspective inside the app. Creating training events and meeting volunteers to prepare for Catch the King is one of the coolest ways Tide Captains can kind of take this program and make it their own. So like I said, this is a screenshot inside the CTK Middle Peninsula region, and there's a mappings tab that shows all of these events. You can make things like training events. If we get a good hurricane rolling through and there's some flooding the next day that hasn't receded yet, you can create an event and go collect data on your own, rally a group of volunteers. And so non-Tide Captains won't see this plus button when they visit this mapping tabs, but Tide Captains will. And so you'll be able to add and create your own events here. Tide Captains generally will know how to use the Sea Level Rise app to collect data. They know how to set up training events and send messages with the app and web portal. It's another really awesome feature that we've improved over the years with the app, is that you can actually send messages back and forth inside the training events in the regions. Navigating our Wetlands Watch website that has all of the information, and especially our app FAQs website, which is, we pushed this a lot last year as kind of a step-by-step guide on how to collect data for Catch the King. And so being able to navigate those websites is really important and is a great way if someone says, hey, I'm interested in Catch the King, you know which website to send them to. Using NOAA's tide prediction charts, of course, to scout flood events, looking ahead of time at the tidal prediction stations and finding a station near you and checking out those tide charts is always a really great opportunity. If you're at this point feeling a little overwhelmed at the number of things that Tide Captains generally know how to do, just know that everyone takes a different approach. Not everyone uses the NOAA tide prediction charts to look at flood events, but we also plan to do a demo on this during our in-person Tide Captain training, which I'll share the date for a little bit later on. So if some of these are unfamiliar to you and you want to get a little bit of training on it, do not worry, we will have opportunities for that. And then, of course, using the VIMS composite map that I shared earlier, this fun guy, to look at flood locations and where data has been collected in the past, and also to scout mapping gaps for the future. So if you're looking around your neighborhood, your community, and you see that there's a huge gap in a place you know there's flooding, that is incredibly important and is something that we want to spotlight for future volunteers. This is on the left here, this is a Tide Captain quick guide that you may have seen Josie send out over the last couple of weeks. Has a couple of those main links that I've been talking about. And if you know of anyone who's interested in being a Tide Captain, this is an awesome sheet to send them, just to give them a quick download on what being a Tide Captain is all about. Approaching Catch the King, again, kind of went over this a little bit. But Tide Captains generally help us share information in their volunteer networks. We can set it up in a way where once we release our registration form and get in a ton of people who say, I want to map in Williamsburg, or I want to map in the Eastern Shore, we will have that list of contact information and have shared it with Tide Captains in the past based on their region. And they've been able to kind of send emails and messages and keep people updated in those specific areas. So this is always an option if you don't have a list of volunteers, but you are interested in doing some volunteer coordination. We will have that opportunity for you. Emailing and using the app and web portal to provide those alerts and updates is something that we walk through during our Tide Captain training. Serving as a local contact for the stewardship of the program. So being able to receive information, send us an email when you might need a flyer, and then of course locating new flood locations like we just talked about. And then this new project, which again, super excited for the PDC to share, is stewarding some local flood sensor networks. Resources for Tide Captains, of course, I've mentioned a few times this app FAQs website. It's just wetlandswatch.org/app FAQs, app-FAQs, excuse me. I am still sharing my screen, right? I don't have the little green box that shows me I'm sharing. Please tell me I have been.
You are.
Okay, cool. I know usually it shows me like a little green highlight box, and when I came here, I was like, oh, it's not there. I know y'all wouldn't let me go that long without having shared my screen, so that's good. So this website is something that we really push closer to Catch the King. We often post our training events towards the top, and then again, a really nice step-by-step on what the Sea Level Rise app is, how to download it. These are our tutorial guides here, which Josie is updating for this year, so you'll get some new refreshed versions of these. Some information on how to do the tide prediction read NOAA's tide prediction charts, and there's an instruction sheet here on it that Karen During made for us last year. We have a couple of maps that will help with data collection this year, and I'm going to cover this one in a minute, but you've already seen the VIMS composite map here. And then, of course, the most important way to get involved in Catch the King is to subscribe for our newsletter. If you have not yet done this, I highly, highly recommend it, or just reach out to Josie or I to get you signed up for it. It's just your email address here on the website. So if you haven't done that yet, I would visit this website, and I believe there's a step-by-step slide on here that I'll show you, and a QR code, actually. So again, FAQs page, one-stop shop for all of those resources, maps, newsletter signups. It's a really good website to check out in case you need to send someone information. So one of the most exciting things that I wanted to talk about today that should be new for all of our returning Tide captains, woo, is this new volunteer interactive map that we've made. This map is a Google My Maps, which I discovered this year that Google has kind of what do I want to call it, like a quick version of ArcGIS. It has not nearly the number of possibilities that ArcGIS software has, but it allows us to input data, add pins, decorate the pins, all of that kind of thing. So this is going to be a public access map for everybody, hopefully functioning a little bit better than the images of maps that I shared last year. It was really difficult to fit all of the flood locations on one little stock piece of paper to show people where to go. And the coolest thing about this map is that all of these red stars are our so far identified flood locations to send volunteers out to. This is not comprehensive. Of course, there are several more locations that we don't have on here that are going to be requesting feedback from during our training events, our feedback from other Tide captains, new and returning. But the coolest thing is that once you get a flood location set up in here, it will let you view it in Google Maps and tell you how to get there, which is just immensely helpful from a volunteer coordination standpoint. Instead of having to go figure out how to put in the directions yourself, Google will take you right there, no problem. So this is, I will share the link for this in a follow-up email, and we may even be able to drop, maybe if I drop this link in the chat, it should work for folks. Just be mindful that when you click into it, it might take a minute or two for it to load since there is a lot of data on this map. And then you will, of course, see these little compass icons, which we'll go over when the PDC takes over. So this will be for everyone. And if you want to get kind of an early scope of what mapping in your area might look like, I would definitely recommend checking this map out, clicking into some of the locations and either confirming or expanding on what we already have and letting Josie or I know where are some new locations this year to send volunteers to. The sea level rise app pins that are on this map, so these blue pins here, this is all just data from 2023. We, of course, have that awesome comprehensive map that you can always check for previous years, but just for the sake of immediate reference, we've added some of the, or all of the data pins from 2023 just to show where people were collecting data last year. So you can also compare that for your own purposes of where you want to collect data this year. So that's the cool map. The other thing I want to share, and we'll go over some more scheduling and what the rest of the Catch the King season looks like after after HRPDC does their presentation. But just to give you a quick heads up now, we will have an in-person Tide Captain training on Saturday, September 7th at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and it's in their Waterman's Hall in Gloucester Point. I'm hoping to bring more training events, as always, to more regions. So if you're a little far from this location, don't worry. We will always try to work with you to get some training events closer to you. But this is just the first one we've got on the calendar, and there is a registration form. So if you'd like to join us for that, we will provide food and drinks and a really fun day. We'll go outside and practice with the Sea Level Rise app. And this is also a really great opportunity for feedback from y'all on how you're seeing the Sea Level Rise app so far and taking on Catch the King in your own way. So I'll leave that up here for another couple of seconds for anyone who wants to scan the QR code. And if you can't scan, Josie's added this awesome link here. It can be, I might take a picture of this one instead of trying to type it out word for word so that you remember it for later. But if for some reason you can't scan the QR code, you can write down that link as well, and that will work. Oh, the QR code.
I'm
Is it
about
the
to say,
Adrian, or
is the QR code or the link itself? Because the QR code worked for my phone, so I don't know if are other
The
people.
link, I'm more a link person than a QR code, and it is not working.
Okay, I'm gonna drop the full link in the chat and see if that works.
Okay.
That would be perfect. Thank you, Josie. Yeah, I'm not sure. It shouldn't be case sensitive, but it might be. This was the shortest. Google will let you, when you've created a form, it'll let you shorten the URL share link. And this is what it shortens to. So not very helpful, but still more helpful than what the full link would be. And I'll wait to move on until Josie's got that, and no rush, but I want to make sure that that works for you, Adrian, before we move on.
Just drop the full link in the chat, see if that works, Adrian.
Okay, okay.
And if anyone else gives it a shot, let us know if it works from the chat.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yay. Great. Thank you, guys. And so you might see this pop up in the next couple of newsletters, or we also have a Facebook group called Help Catch the King Tide that we post these kinds of things on, which we'll go over more in detail later on. So just so that's an opportunity for you guys. We look forward to seeing you there if you're interested. All right. This is a step-by-step on how to get into the newsletter. If you want to do this right here and now and you know you're not part of the Catch the King newsletter yet, I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a couple of seconds. This QR code should work, or you can visit wetlandswatch.org/catchtheking and look for this box on the website. It should be somewhere on the right-hand side as you scroll a little bit down. You add your email and you hit sign up, and then you'll get a confirmation email in your inbox to confirm it. I know there are some folks who might have done this last year and didn't get the confirmation email, so just double check your inbox. If you haven't received any Catch the King newsletters this year, but think you may have done this, I would just redo it and keep an eye out for that subscription email. I'll leave that up for a second. Sweet. All right. Cool. And then just on the note of the newsletter, this is, like I said, your one-stop shop and really the most kind of advanced and early way to hear about a lot of the training events and fun things that we have going on with Catch the King. We also share information about the partner programs like Measure the Muck, the ODU Blue Line Project, things like that all get shared in our newsletter. And I've just started actually including information about events in North Carolina on this newsletter. I had a separate newsletter list going on for that, and I've decided to merge them all under one umbrella. So if you have folks in North Carolina who are experiencing some flood risk and you think they might like Catch the King, there will be information for them in there too. We have all sorts of things like registration links. Again, those complementary science projects. We post that interactive map that I showed earlier on there. There is an arts contest in the development, and I'm not going to give anything away on that, but it should be a really fun opportunity for everyone. Last year we did a photography contest, and it went pretty well, and so we'd like to recognize that again this year. And then, of course, we run our appreciation event every year, early in the couple of months following Catch the King, so usually January, February time of the following year. And this is what it looks like. You'll see an email that kind of looks like this, and it will have this banner at the top. All right, so that is my spiel for now. Like I said, I'm gonna turn the page over to the PDC, and then after that, we're gonna go over some scheduling and over the next couple of months, what to expect from Catch the King. Emma, you should have share permission, so let me see if I can stop and give it a shot, but let me know if it doesn't work. Beautiful. Oh, you're on mute, Emma. I'm so sorry.
Wow, you would think by now I had Zoom figured out, but sorry about that. So, like I said earlier, my name is Emma Corbett, and I am the Resilience Planner with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. And as Gabby has alluded to several times, we're very excited to be partnering with them this season to connect with this really motivated network of volunteers through Catch the King to help us steward our roadway flooding sensor network. So I will just give a brief overview of our sensor network really quickly. This is a pilot project. So we have 20 water level sensors that are located throughout 7 localities in Hampton Roads. And these are the locations of those sensors generally on this map. I know it's small. But these sensors, in addition to the physical sensor at these locations, there are 2 other pieces of this network that make it a kind of smart network to help alert people of roadway flooding in the region. So the first piece of that is this public data portal on a platform called Hydrosphere. And here you can view water level data for each of the sensors in the network. And that's a really cool tool. Each of the sites has a kind of time series that displays the water level. And you can see actually in this small screenshot, when there's a flooding event, you get a big spike in that water level reading. So that is one piece of the network. And then the other piece is an integration with a navigation app called Waze. So if you're not familiar with Waze, similar to Google Maps or Apple Maps, and it is a free app that you can download on the App Store. And our sensors, when certain conditions are met, will trigger an alert in Waze so that drivers are aware of potential flooding along their route. So these 3 kind of pieces, the physical sensors, the data portal, and then that integration with Waze compose our pilot network. It's not. Okay. So there are 3 different installation types that you might encounter if you were to go and visit our sensor sites. The first kind are these radar level sensors, and these are mounted on a horizontal beam that extends out over a waterway. So the actual sensor is at the end of this horizontal beam here and is looking down onto that waterway and collecting data about the level of the waterway and transmitting it back to the network. The second kind of installation is a pressure transducer. So here the sensor, if you can see my mouse, there's a little green dot on the ground here. So the actual sensor is in that catch basin and will record the level of the water as that basin fills with water. And then that data is transmitted back to the network. In this photo here, the second photo, you can see that pieces of the sensor are kind of attached to existing infrastructure. Whereas at other sites, there is actually just a standalone pole that holds the materials for the sensor. So this third photo here, the sensor is also at ground level, and then the box at the top of the post is where the electronics are hosted that are required for the data to be transmitted to the network. So we're really excited about connecting with all of you and getting your help monitoring this pilot network. There are 20 sites throughout the region, and we don't have the capacity to visit them regularly internally. So we're really excited about the potential of adding these to the Catch the King network and having volunteer eyes on the sensors for a variety of reasons. First, it'll help us to quickly identify any on-site problems. If you are doing an assessment at one of these sensor sites and you notice a very obvious issue with one of the sensors, you can let us know, which is very beneficial because we can act quickly to connect with our maintenance team and address those problems. Second is that you'll help us ground truth the measurements that are being recorded by the sensor network. So having eyes on the actual site and then comparing that to what we're seeing in the water level measurements that are reported in our hydrosphere portal will be really helpful for assessing the accuracy of those sensor readings. And then finally, verifying the Waze integration. So similarly to kind of ground truthing the data displayed in the hydrosphere portal, it'll be really helpful to have citizen scientists note whether or not the Waze flooding alerts are triggered when there are flooding conditions at those sites. So as Gabby said, she's updated her awesome Google Maps that has all of the sites for Catch the King this year and previous years. And the HRPDC sensor sites are indicated by those little white compass logos. And so each of those will be labeled with the site name. And when you click on them, there is a photo of the sensor and also some instructions about the data collection that we would like at each of those sites. So these are the 4 things that would be extremely helpful to know about each of our sites if you end up stewarding a sensor. First is, as I mentioned earlier, checking the hydrosphere's portal and noting the most recent water level reading for the site. So this QR code should direct you to the portal, and I can also drop the, well, actually I don't have access to the chat now, but I can drop the link to the portal in the chat once I'm done here. But in the hydrosphere portal, you'll be able to navigate through each of the sites in the left-hand panel, and you'll be able to view the water level. You'll see here that the water level is negative in this screenshot, and that's good. That means that the water level is below the level of the roadway. When flooding conditions are occurring, it will be a positive number. So if you see the negative numbers, that's not a mistake. That's correct. And then second is to check Waze and record if there is a flooding alert at that location when you are there. And then the third thing that would be very helpful is photos of the sensor and surrounding area. And then lastly, and potentially the most important, is if you notice anything obvious that is wrong with the sensors, that my contact information will be on the next slide, as well as in the map that Gabby showed earlier. So contacting us and letting us know of any obvious damage to the sensors would be hugely beneficial to us. And we've had some issues with vandalism and that kind of thing in the past. So if you notice loose wires or any debris or anything like that when you visit a site, that would be very helpful to know. And I believe Gabby's going to talk a bit more about data collection later, but for now, that's all I have. So if anybody has any questions, I can take those now. This is my contact information, and yeah, I'll turn it back over to Gabby.
Thanks, Emma. I want to be mindful of yours and Ben's time. Would it be better for us to take questions on the Adopt a Sensor Network now, or I'll just make that a point to do the top of our Q&A later? I didn't know how long you guys wanted to stick on.
I can stick on, and we can do all questions at the end if that's better.
Great. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and so just to show you guys what this looks like, I'll switch back over share permissions on here. We were talking about at least am I sharing? I am sharing the right screen. I don't know why it's not showing me that little green box that tells me I'm doing it right. Each of the sensors we have, like Emma said, denoted as this little compass symbol. So if you live in the Hampton Roads area and near one of these sensors, we're really going to run this as kind of an Adopt a Sensor program and have you guys contact either me or Emma or Josie to let us know you would like to steward one of these. And the way you can kind of do that is explore the map, check out a site that might be near you. And as Emma said, we've added some instructions on these sites. So if you click on a red star, which is just our flood location, you'll notice it has the name and the directions to the Google Maps. But if you click on a compass, we've got a lot more kind of information here. So we've got a step-by-step guide on the data that the PDC is looking for. We've got a direct link to that hydrosphere website that shows the water levels So you can take that measurement. And then Emma's contact information is on here as well. So again, if you notice anything wrong with the sensor, any damage, then you can reach out to her directly and let them know about that particular site. To go back to what this means in terms of how we're going to run this through the Sea Level Rise app. What we're going to do for this kind of first pilot attempt is for any tide captains, new or returning, that think that they would be interested in stewarding this kind of network and getting involved in this project, and doing some non-just Catch the King related mapping with the Sea Level Rise app, which I know has been an interest of y'all in the past. We're creating a separate region for this in the Sea Level Rise app, and I've set this as the location of the PDC's office, but this encompasses all of the sensors. So how this will work is that if you're interested, please reach out to us and we'll get you set up inside the Sea Level Rise app and into the right area and where to collect data. As usual with the app, you can collect flood data around the base of the sensor, you can collect photos, and you can collect notes the same way you would as any other data collection with Catch the King. We're just going to do it in kind of its own region so that we can separate out that data. Monitoring, again, can be ongoing. I think, Emma, you mentioned monthly would be really awesome. And so for those folks who are looking at something where they can just do this on a more frequent basis, looking for more opportunities to collect flood data, this is just a really awesome opportunity for you to get some more coordination. We could go so far as to have, if there's like a master naturalist group or something like that that has a couple of folks that want to steward one sensor, and you guys coordinate where someone goes out 1 month, someone else goes out the next month. All of that is possible, and we'll work with you on figuring out what that looks like. And then we're here to help, of course. If you're interested in this, again, first step, reach out to us and we'll get you connected. We'll teach you how to use the map to kind of identify those sensors and find the data that you need. And then, of course, any other data collection on, if you want to collect more photos of the site when you go out just with the phone app, like with your camera roll phone app, that is also welcome too, and just to steward them in that way. I want to do, if anyone knows how to use the raise hand thing on Zoom, is there anyone right now that's interested in doing this network just to get a really quick first stab at it? Or you can come off mute and say, I'm really interested. I want to do this. Any takers?
But we don't have any sites up in Middle Peninsula or Northern Neck, do we?
No, this is just for the Hampton Roads area, unfortunately, but we'll look into some more opportunities for you up there.
Well, I don't want to drive over that bridge for this.
I avoid it when I can too.
And I see Carol and Christian. For anyone who doesn't know, it's the react thing on the bottom of your screen, and you just press the react and press raise hand once after that. But thank you both for typing and
And Bryce,
Yeah,
I think you signed in too. You were interested. That's cool.
I think LR now can definitely get some good volunteers to regularly monitor the VB ones, unless there's others interested, so we can talk about that some more.
Great. Oh, and Dave too. That's wonderful. I think you'll love this project, Dave. Cool. Well, we've got some takers. So we'll circle back once we finish up this presentation. I'm going to send everybody who attended this call a copy of the slides and everything like that. And from there, I will make sure that myself, Emma, and Josie and Ben are all CC'd on that email. And so if you would like to get involved, please respond to our emails and we'll get you in there, get you ready for some monitoring. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Emma, for that awesome presentation. Super exciting. All right, so to wrap up kind of our broad Catch the King, what we're going to be up to. Oh, Joe, did you have a question or are you just saying you're interested? I think that's an interest.
I'm interested.
Cool. I thought you might be. That'd be awesome. Okay, so to talk a little bit about the schedule through August and into early October, this is really our main outreach and training push. We'll be holding in-person training events as much as we can and across as much of Virginia as we can. We're always looking for new community partners and people who are interested in co-hosting training in different regions. Like I said, we're trying to really gain more effort, Eastern Shore, Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, to really make sure the folks who are further away get some training time. And so we're always looking for partners, places to hold training events, people who are interested in this. And so any way that we can help plan that, we would love to. And then, of course, filling in the volunteer map. So one of the things, like I said, that we're going to be doing during our training events is adding more of these red stars to the map. This is hugely beneficial from a volunteer engagement standpoint because we always want that feedback from neighborhood and community members who know where it floods in all of these little nooks and crannies of their neighborhoods. And so the more feedback we can get from that during training events, the absolute best. In September, we will have that Tide Captain training on Saturday, September 7th. Registration for Catch the King as a whole will come out towards the middle, maybe the end of September. We have a couple weeks in October of lead time, so we're not super pressed about this. We want to give ourselves enough lead time to make sure we have a good list of volunteers going and can help them get pointed in the direction of a Tide Captain. We're going to do a coordinated press release. Of course, we have some media partners who help us promote the good word about Catch the King, but anybody who's got a newsletter or any kind of other kind of news update opportunity, we would love to coordinate with you in really launching this registration effort. We will have a wet run again this year. We did this last year because with every new iteration of the Sea Level Rise app, there's always it's always good to have an opportunity to test out the new features, make sure it's working smoothly, especially with a more higher volume event when we have more people engaged and volunteering. The great thing about this wet run event is that we're seeing almost equivocal king tide water levels as we are during our Catch the King weekend. So this is almost like 2 Catch the Kings in one season, which is awesome. So if you're interested and you're unavailable during the actual Catch the King weekend, this is a great opportunity to get some data collection in and also give it a first run before we do our big Catch the King event in October. We'll do a Tide Captain huddle. So anyone that we've been working with from now until the end of September, I want to check in with everybody so that folks get volunteer lists, get the information they need, flyers, make sure they get a training event on the calendar if they need it. So we'll do another kind of one of these more casual discussions between Tide Captains who have been identified. And if anyone has already been out monitoring the HRPDC flood sensor network, it's a great time to check in on that. So don't worry, we will have another huddle on that once we get rolling. In October, we will have an info session on Catch the King. I think I'd actually have to go check my calendar for the specific date on that. Josie and I were just talking about it the other week, but we'll send those dates out in the newsletter once they're super finalized. And our final training events will happen in those first couple of weeks. I'll do some kind of Tide Captain check-ins throughout those couple of weeks to make sure everyone's got what they need, make sure they're communicating with their volunteers and they know where to go. And all of that fun stuff. And then last but not least, Catch the King is officially the weekend of October 17th through the 20th. And the reason why we open this up for multiple days, for folks who have been with us for several years, you know that king tides don't roll in at the same time or the same pace up and down coastal Virginia. So folks in Hampton Roads might get a really nice 10 a.m. king tide, and folks in the Northern Neck might not get one till 6 p.m., 7 p.m. As a good timing. And then by that time, it's already getting dark. So we want to open this up for the full weekend. And if you remember the king tide calendar that I shared earlier on in the slides, you'll know that there's high water all throughout those days. We're seeing, I think, an average of 3.5 feet above mean low water right now. So every single one of these days will have an opportunity for king tides as long as the winds cooperate and the predictions are tried and true. So I'm going to leave this on the screen for just another second more, just in case anyone needs to write down those important dates. If you miss them now, don't fret. They will always come out as reminders in the Catch the King newsletter, and they're usually all over our Catch the King website. So we have that registration page and things like that. Fabulous. What to do now? So you might be wondering what's next. If you're new or if you're a returning Tide Captain, download and test drive the Sea Level Rise app. For all my returning folks, there is a new update of the Sea Level Rise app out on the App Store. We have some fun features to explore this year that we'll go over on that September 7th Tide Captain training. And we'll also put out some tutorial guides on how to navigate the app, like I said earlier. So if you are new, make sure you download the app, give it a test run. Poke around in it, see if you like it. Use the App FAQs website again to find those tutorial guides and figure out how to get started. If you have any questions at all or are having difficulty getting into the app, please do feel free to reach out to us. Oh, and my slides have paused. Give me one moment. This would be a horrible time for my internet to go out. I'll wait. Give it a refresh. Sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties. Josie, do you have the presentation up by chance? Oh, never mind. Just kidding. It worked. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Check out that interactive map that I shared, the one with the PDC sensors on it, the red stars. Again, I will send links for this, and it will be hyperlinked in this presentation after this meeting. So check that out for an early look at flood locations that we've already identified and also some gaps. Mark your calendar for these dates. Wet Run, September 19th to 22nd. Catch the King, October 17th to 20th. Sign up for that newsletter. Again, can't say it enough. That is the most important way to get information and updates on what we're doing, where training events are happening, and also opportunities to give us feedback on where you want training and where we can help. If you want to be a Tide Captain, the whole goal of this meeting was to hopefully spark some interest in folks who are thinking about becoming a Tide Captain and who are interested. Please, please, please reach out, send us an email, and let us know that you're interested. Of course, all of my returning Tide Captains, give me a shout in case anything's changed for you this year. I know many of you have been with us for several years in a row, and we always want to make sure that you don't feel burdened to carry this on longer than you have energy for. So we will always continue to recruit new members to help you in your regions, and hopefully get some new folks rolling in. So reach out anytime, and especially for that Adopt a Sensor network, we want to get some folks rolling on that soon. All right, so I'm going to pause there after the wonderful information we've shared. I'm going to first welcome questions specifically on the Adopt a Sensor network so that the PDC can get those in case they need to jump and we run over time. So first, if anyone has any questions about working with Adopt a Sensor, I want to open the floor for that now.
I have a question. Are there sensors in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area?
Yes, there are sensors in both of those localities. So there are some in Virginia
Okay.
Beach as well as some in Norfolk. I believe off the top of my head, there are 4 in Norfolk and 4 in Virginia Beach.
There are also some sensors in Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Poquoson, and Newport News.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the Adopt a Sensor? I think Josie's written the names down for people who have said they're interested. If we don't hear from you, we'll follow up with you and get you in there. And again, spread the word if you think anyone who you know, even if it's not yourself, who might be interested in helping out with that, helping us spread the word would be awesome. And we'll have more instructions on it during that September 7th Tide Captain training. All right. That sounds good. Emma and Ben, anything else you guys want to say? You can hang on totally. I just wanted to give you guys space. If there's anything else you want to say to the group before we move on to general Q&A.
We just really appreciate everyone's time and interest. And if you have any other questions about this effort or, we are looking and having conversations about expanding the sensor network. So if you have ideas about kind of where some good locations might be, I think one of the key things about this network that is different from some of the other efforts is that it is focused on roadway flooding. And so we're not just looking at the areas that might always flood if they're right on the shore. We're really focusing on those kind of stretches of roads that flood frequently. And being able to put that information out into people's hands so they can make better decisions when they're out driving. So, but yeah, we also have a lot of other work going on at the PDC when it comes to resilience. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out them to me or Emma. We'd be happy to have you be a part of the discussion. And thanks again, Gabby and Wetlands Watch, for letting us be a part of today.
Always. Thanks, Ben. All right. So then I will go ahead and open the floor for general Q&A. Any and all questions about Catch the King, being a tide captain, what's next? Please feel free to jump in or go ahead and put it in the chat, whatever is more comfortable for you.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Okay. Is there a new app this year?
There is new updates to the app, but it's not a new app entirely. Yeah.
Do we need to do anything to get those updates?
The only thing I would recommend is check out if you go to the App Store, whether you have, I think it's Android is Google Play, Apple, the App Store. Go in and check to see if there's an update. You should be able to just search the app, Sea Level Rise app, and it should say update.
There wasn't. I mean, it just said open, which means you've got it.
That might mean a lot of people have auto updates on. I'm one of those people because I don't like to have to go into the App Store. I think it might be a standard feature of certain phones where it'll auto update for you. This is something that we'll do in person too. So if I see you in person and we have a training event, we'll double check. There are certain ways to tell if you've got the new features or not. And actually, it might be a good idea for anyone who has the app already. If you log into the app and look in, I don't know how well this will do with let me take my blur off and maybe I can show it.
Oh, if you stop sharing, it'll make your screen
view
bigger.
Good idea. Let me spotlight myself too. How about that? Okay. So when you open the app, everyone's will look different. And I know it's kind of backwards right now, but this will look different for everybody depending on the regions that you've joined. From the My Regions tab, there's a little 3-line up here. If you see this link that says share your flood story, that means you have the newest version of the app. So I would check that. And if you don't have it, that means we'll have to get the update for you and we'll work through that together.
Okay, I don't have it, but maybe I can figure it out. Now, question. I know you said there were some updates. So have there been anything specifically to address the issue of too many users not getting their data in?
We have worked a lot on the data loading issues with the app and specifically through the trouble spots portal. The high volume events continue to be something that the developers are just really big question marking, and that's why we continue to have the wet run. And so we're hoping that what they've done on the back end for things like the trouble spots tab, where when you logged onto it and it was just not loading pins because of how much information it was receiving, I think on the same front, that might have created some efficiencies for high volume events with lots of people submitting data at the same time. It's something that we just have to keep testing out and seeing on the ground what it looks like. And so during the wet run, I'm hoping to get a lot more participants this year so we can see ahead of time if we're still having those lag issues. But I know that they continue to look into it and see what they can do from a data collection standpoint. But thank you for always raising that, Adrian. We're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gabby.
Yes.
Gabby.
John.
I lost the original app and I had to rejoin again. So I've lost all my information from before.
Oh no.
So
did you have to create a new account as in?
I did.
Okay.
But it's wiped everything out.
Okay. Was it an issue of not like having the login information, or was it just not letting you in?
Login information.
Login information. That's going to be a tricky one. I can go see. I know that I can find your old profile on Sea Rising Solutions. I don't know that I can go in and view what your login information was. Do you think it's an email or a password issue? Like which one seemed to be giving you trouble?
I think it's an email.
Email. Okay. I would try. Do you have multiple emails?
Try what?
Do you have multiple emails and you signed up with a new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got old emails. I did away with them. Apparently, it was on the old email.
Okay. Let me follow up with you because I think one thing we can do is maybe go into your old account and just change the email address for the login. And you should, if you've done away with your old email account,
Right, yes.
that the system might be picking up that it's just invalid now and won't let you in. And so
The
otherwise,
the
go ahead.
password's the same.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I was gonna say password's usually the trickier one. So yeah, let's see if we can change your email. I'll link with you once this is over and send you an email and we can figure that out. If we can't get the email changed, just know that all of your old data is saved. It doesn't, just because the portal says you can't use this email anymore, doesn't mean that your data is not there anymore. So you may have to start on a new account, but you can at least still access all of your old data pins from that account.
Okay.
But we can take a look at it and see if we can get you changed with the email.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you.
for that. Yeah.
And then I think Bryce had a question as well, and then Bill after.
Great.
I was gonna ask, are we supposed to email Josie about being a tide captain for the September 7th event?
Yeah, I'd say reach out to Josie and I think her. Oh yeah, I hadn't gotten to my let me put this up while we're doing Q&A. This is the contact sheet for Josie and I. So yeah, I would reach out to Josie if you're interested in being a tide captain. Reach out to me and or Emma if you're interested in the Adopt a Sensor program. All right, Bill, go ahead.
Bill, yeah.
Okay, I've got a question on Tide Captain. I apparently am still listed as a Northern Neck Tide Captain and a Middle Peninsula Tide Captain.
But you are only Middle Peninsula, right?
I am only Middle Peninsula, and I keep getting the request to approve people for Northern Neck, and I don't want to do it because I'm not up there.
No problem. So the reason that happened is because we had, prior to my tenure at Wetlands Watch, the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula regions were joined, and
we were.
One of the early discussions I had with y'all was you were like, we're big enough to have our own region. So I think, Bill, we'll have to go in and unjoin you. Do you want me to walk you through that right now? So do you have the app up and open? I can show you how to do that real quick.
Well, do we really want to tie up people for that?
It'll be super fast, and other people might be interested on what that looks like.
Okay. I can bring it up. I had it up a little while ago and I've just put it down because I checked to make sure mine was updated.
Yeah, that's so I think all of the folks who had joined that Northern Neck, because we kept Northern Neck as the main one that wasn't previously merged, and then Middle Peninsula was the new one that was created. So you're a member of both at the moment.
I am a member of both.
Yep. Do you see the Northern Neck one pop up on your My Regions tab?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Tap into that.
I did.
And then, let me unblur myself again.
Unjoin?
Unjoin. Yep, there you go.
Well, I didn't want to do that without talking to you.
Yes, that'll stop the email alerts. We've got some awesome folks up in the Northern Neck that I know are on it, so no worries about that. And are you okay with still receiving notifications from Middle Peninsula?
Oh yeah.
Great. Perfect.
It just that I didn't want to answer anything for Northern Neck, even though I still work with them all the time and I'm master naturalist trainings and stuff like that together all the time. But
yeah,
I just don't want to answer for somebody else.
I appreciate that. No, thank you for letting us know. And your joining of any region is dependent on which region you want to map in. So I think it makes sense for you to be in Middle Peninsula. And if there are any training events or anything like that we run on the Northern Neck that you want to get involved with, we can always coordinate that too.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else? Questions? Did I miss anyone, Josie? Okay.
I don't think so.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, concerns, excitement? All right. Well, awesome. Cannot thank you guys enough, new and returning Tide Captains, for hanging out with us, learning more about Catch the King as it continues to grow and change and develop every year. As always, we continue to take your feedback and any concerns you have with the app, or how we're approaching mapping, how we're coordinating volunteers very, very carefully. And we want to make sure you guys enjoy a really robust Catch the King mapping. So please just know our lines are always open in case you run into any issues. Josie or I are more than happy to help you. And we're also, again, really excited about the Adopt a Sensor network with the PDC. Can't say it enough. If you're interested in that, email me or Emma, and we'll get you ready. I think it's going to be a really fun project. And then if anyone, again, you're new here and you don't think the Tide Captain is quite the role for you, just know that signing up for that newsletter, we'll put out a bunch of information about upcoming training events for more general interest. We'll do some app mapping practice, so that you can get a feel for what that looks like on the ground. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons, and I hope y'all have a great, great end of your summer season. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.